In this video we're going to introduce operations management, and we're going to do it through very simple concepts. The concept of the economic system and how the economic system transforms inputs into outputs. So in any production process, or indeed almost any process, whether it be a service or a product, we start with inputs. And in economics, we say there are four factors of production. There are four types of input. There's land, labour, capital, and entrepreneurship. Here we've called it management. So we have four factors of production, and we have four rewards to the factors of production. Land is rewarded by rent, labour by wage, capital by a rate of return, and entrepreneurship by profits. So we have four factors of production, except we call it management here, and we have four rewards. Now the inputs go into a process. The inputs are, generally speaking, need to be processed in order to make outputs, and we do this by looking at the economic system and how the economic system transforms the inputs into outputs. So we have production units, we have companies and firms, and they take in inputs, raw materials perhaps, and labour, capital, enterprise. They take in the factors of production and they process them into something which is useful, into an output. It could be a service. They take in information, raw information, and they process it into refined information. So the outcome of the economic process is outputs, and these are the goods and services that we purchase. Of course, we have feedback loops between all of the sectors. If the goods and services don't meet the quality standards that people expect, they will feed back, and it will go back to the economic system to improve its processes, and the economic system itself may feed back to the amount of land or labour or the composition of the factors of production used in the productive process. So there are feedback mechanisms in play all the time. But very simply, an economic system, be it a process within a company or with the national economy, we have inputs, and the inputs are processed into outputs. Now productivity, well, productivity is a measure of the effectiveness of the transformation process. The transformation process moving from inputs into outputs. Productivity is a measure of the effectiveness of how well the inputs are transformed into the outputs. So it's a measure of process improvement, the effectiveness of the process. It represents output relative to input. And that's the basic, if you like, equation. That's the basic calculation that we do. We look at the amount of output we get per unit of input. So it's the number of units produced divided by the inputs used. And that's a measure of our productivity. So productivity increases tends to improve our standard of living. More productivity means we get more output for a given input. Well, that's a higher standard of living. We have improved our production process, so we're getting more output for the same inputs. That's an increase in productivity. There are measurement problems. Quality may change while the quantity of inputs and outputs remain the same. So the company may be producing more output, but the quality of the output may have diminished. So measuring quality is a very complicated issue. Sometimes quality may be psychological. It may be what I feel about the product. Do I think the product is good quality versus what you think about the product? You may think the product is useless. I think it's fantastic. So we have different perceptions of quality. So we have a measurement problem. The fact that productivity changes, what is the effect on quality? External elements may cause an increase or decrease in productivity. So sometimes productivity is not down to good management on the part of the management of a business, who have restructured their production process and are now producing more. It could be that schools and colleges within the country are producing better pupils and better students who are coming to work for industry and are more productive. It could be an external element. It could be there's better health facilities in the country, so people are away from work less, or people can work harder when they're at work or apply themselves more effectively. These are external factors. These are not within the control of the business. So the business may boast about having higher productivity, but that may in fact be caused by something outside of the business. The precise units of measurement may also be lacking. To say that output has increased per unit of input, well, inputs tend to cooperate with each other. The machines, we can't talk about the productivity of the machine separate from the productivity of labour, because machines need workers to press the buttons and look after the machines. So the machines don't work alone. Likewise, generally speaking, workers don't work alone. They work with the machines. And the type of machines and the way the machines are used and the way the plant is laid out may be a function of management. So management, machines and workers are working together. So it's very difficult to isolate out the productivity of labour. If we consider, let's say, a typist working in the 1920s or the 1930s with a manual typewriter, how many words accurately typed could the typist go through in an hour? Say 1 hour of work, how many words could the typist accurately produce? Now, if you consider a typist today working with a dedicated word processor, working even with Microsoft Office, with Word, how many words accurately can the typist type today? Well, I'd suggest they can type a lot more today than they could in the 1920s or the 1930s. But is that because the typist is more skilled or because the machine has improved? So are we talking about the productivity of labour or the productivity of capital? Or of both? So it's very difficult sometimes to get precise measures. Service productivity needs also to be considered. Service productivity tends to be labour intensive. If we go for a haircut, we go to a barber shop or a hairdressing shop, salon, and we will deal with a person who will cut hair. So it's a service. It's labour intensive. Admittedly, the person may use some capital, they may use scissors, and they may use a comb, and they may use a hairdryer, and that's capital. But essentially, it's a labour intensive activity. Frequently, it's individually processed. So, generally speaking, services tend to be based on individuals. When we go for a haircut, the person cuts one person's hair at a time. It's individual. They don't run up and down the line cutting different people at different times and running back and doing the next one. They tend to do one at a time. You go see the doctor deals, generally speaking, with one person at a time. So services tend to be individually based. Often it's an intellectual task performed by professionals. We go to see an accountant, it's individual, but they're dealing with particular issues and they're bringing their expertise to bear on the issue. So it's a service. The hairdresser has a particular skill at cutting hair. The doctor has a particular skill in medicine. So they tend to be specialists in the area. And it's very difficult to mechanize services. When we go to see the doctor, we need to give a history of our health and what's been happening to us recently. And the doctor will base a diagnosis on what we tell him or her. It's difficult for machines to make decisions and to make them accurately. And also, we may not be articulate in giving our history, giving our medical history to the medical professional. So if we were to give it to a machine, they may not understand what we mean, the intensity of what we mean. So it's difficult to mechanize services. And it's sometimes very difficult to evaluate the quality. When we go back to the hairdresser, if we have a haircut, I may like the haircut as the customer, but my family and friends may dislike it. It's their perceptions. If I go to the doctor may prescribe some medication. Perhaps another doctor may have prescribed a slightly different medication. So we have issues of quality and what is the correct procedure and agreeing standards. When we come to services, that is very difficult. So in this class, what we've looked at is issues about productivity. We've looked at the transformation of inputs into outputs and the factors of production. And we've talked about, very generally, the differences between products and services. And that's all I'm going to do in this session. It's a gentle introduction to operations management. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.